This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Israel prepares for war with the Iranian-backed Hezbollah army. See how the IDF is developing state-of-the-art countermeasures to defeat its enemies while protecting civilians. Plus, a first-hand look at the situation inside Syria with Dave Eubank. And the Tower of David Museum digs into its ancient past and prepares for tourists to once again visit this old city treasure. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. 15 years after the Second Lebanon War, Israel is preparing for the next war with the Iranian-backed Hezbollah army. I attended an IDF training exercise that showed how Israel is developing tactics to both defeat Hezbollah and protect civilians caught in harm's way. In 2006, Hezbollah fired nearly 4,000 rockets at Israel for more than a month, forcing Israelis to seek shelter. Today, the terror group has amassed an arsenal of some 150,000 rockets and could fire as many rockets in one day as they fired in that 34-day war.
In the ongoing week, we are exercising several scenarios against the terror organization Hezbollah.
Colonel Barak Hiram says the IDF exercise is all about getting ready for the next conflict. They face a complicated battlefield and enemy.
Hezbollah is targeting most of its arsenal against civilians and Israeli civil population. Secondly, is holding most of its activities embedded within the Lebanese civilians and using them as a human shield for his terror actions.
Tactics haven't changed in 15 years, although the scope is likely larger.
And we will not hesitate to take the most severe measures against those who are aiming thousands of rockets and missiles against innocent civilians for one purpose, to kill them. This is something that we will not be able to tolerate.
For years, the IDF has documented how Hezbollah embeds its war machine within civilian infrastructure, like schools, hospitals, and homes. That's why Israel is preparing a state-of-the-art countermeasure. These are exclusive scenes of new IDF units called Sufa. They operate on the battlefield to direct fire at the enemy, while also protecting civilians. Using integrated touchscreens, software, and real-time intelligence, personnel synchronize air, land, and sea forces to target the enemy. Hezbollah wants the IDF to miscalculate and hit the terror group's human shields. The mission of these Sufa units is to constantly check and recheck targets so civilians are not harmed. The goal? Wage war, be humane, and deprive Hezbollah of a propaganda victory. Military leaders expect these units will make a difference, as the next war will undoubtedly require boots on the ground.
We understand that in any scenario that will occur in the future, we will be forced to use ground forces and to maneuver inside Lebanon in order to eliminate threats against Israel and in order to protect the Israel's sovereignty and civilians all around.
At a background briefing, CBO News learned this next conflict will be known as the First Northern Front War, since Hezbollah is so entrenched in both Lebanon and Syria. The IDF adds the next war will be on a bigger scale and hopefully create a new situation inside Lebanon, a scenario they hope ultimately leads to peace. Earlier this year, I visited the Israeli-Lebanese border for a closer look at the situation there. As we said, both Israel and Hezbollah are preparing for that next war. Take a look at what we found out then about that upcoming war. The border here between Israel and Lebanon is deceptively quiet, but on the other side of this fence lies Hezbollah with more than 100,000 rockets that can hit almost anywhere inside Israel.
All of them were brought to Lebanon in order to be launched against Israel one day.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zahavi studies the danger of Hezbollah through a research organization, Alma.
Hezbollah is the proxy of Iran in the region. It's the most professional proxy of Iran in the region. It's the most equipped, dangerous proxy of Iran in the region. And we are here standing, looking in the eyes of Hezbollah. And the people that are raising their kids just a few feet from us every morning looking in the eyes of Hezbollah.
I'm standing in the village of Hanita here on the Israeli-Lebanese border. Behind me, you can see children playing in this kindergarten, and over here, you can see how close the Lebanese border is. The sense of danger is real and ever present for those living here. In 2006, they lived through a 34-day war, which saw Hezbollah fire nearly 4,000 rockets into Israel. That barrage paralyzed northern Israel, chasing 1 million Israelis to the south, while the rest spent most of that month in bomb shelters. In 2021, the IDF believes Hezbollah is once again considering attacking Israel in what Zahavi describes as days of battle.
Days of battle would mean that the people that are living just here, a few feet from us, would not be able to get out of their home because it will be too dangerous. Meaning that their children will hear the sirens every 2 weeks and will have to run for shelter. This is a reality that is unbearable for the people of the north.
This is the only active border crossing between Israel and Lebanon. The UN base is just down the road within a no man's land, and I'm standing in an IDF base that keeps constant watch over Hezbollah.
Their threat is no joke, and we never underestimate our enemy, but we keep training, we keep practicing, we keep on gathering intelligence and always getting prepared and keeping readiness for the next conflict, for the next fight, making sure we have the upper hand.
Lieutenant Dalton describes Hezbollah's military strategy as one of blending in by creating a virtual civilian camouflage.
Hezbollah decided to take the step and make all of its establishments in southern Lebanon based on civilian clothing, civilian territory, civilian houses, really blend itself, camouflage itself into the population and keep operating in. So they know to hide, whether it's taking over civilian villages or households and really setting base up over there. But our intelligence is strong enough to understand their work and how they operate and to really pinpoint the location of their bases inside civilian territory.
Most Christians in the United States, North America, and around the world don't realize is that Lebanon is important to Iran because it is the forward operating base of their most aggressive offensive attack whenever they decide to attack Israel.
Middle East expert and author of the Beirut Protocol, Joel Rosenberg warns what might happen as the Biden administration considers re-entering the Iranian nuclear deal.
If Israel feared that the Biden administration was going to go down some road of negotiations that was short-sighted, ill-conceived, and dangerous, Israel might have to attack to neutralize those sites.
That could trigger Hezbollah.
Iran would unleash a barrage, the most devastating missile attack maybe in the history of mankind. They have upwards of, I hear, 150,000 missiles positioned right across that border, all through southern Lebanon. And they would light up the skies, and all the Israel defenses, all the missile defenses we have, would do some good, but it couldn't possibly stop a barrage of thousands and thousands and thousands of missiles coming in every day.
Israel's leaders realize those dangers. Some believe the IDF's goal would be to make its next response so massive that the next war with Hezbollah would be known as the last. Up next, an inside look at the situation in Syria with Dave Eubank of the Free Burma Rangers. For years, Syria has been the battleground where ISIS destroyed churches and lives. We talk with Dave Eubank of the Free Burma Rangers in our Jerusalem studio about what the situation is like now and how his organization is rebuilding churches and restoring lives. Dave Eubank, thanks for joining us. First, Dave, explain and describe the situation right there in Kobani and other places there in Syria.
Well, ISIS high water mark was right here in 2014, where they slaughtered many people. And then they were pushed back. And finally, in 2019, in a place called Baghouz on the Euphrates River in the southeastern part of Syria, that was their last stand physically, and they lost. We were there for that as well. And they lost all territory. So everyone now, we were just in Raqqa, dedicating the church in Raqqa. That was the capital of ISIS. And everyone we met said, thank God ISIS is gone. Life is better, much better. And it was beautiful to put that church up. However, ISIS still exists in different cells, especially in an area called Deir ez-Zor along the Euphrates. And there's attacks every week there. So they're not finished yet. Also, as you were asking about situation now, right here, we're on the Turkish border. And as you know, Turkey invaded at the end of 2019, October, and displaced hundreds of thousands of Kurds, Christians, Arabs along this area. And so the people in Kobani right now, because I can see the Turkish flag, I can see their wall, probably 300 yards away, they're afraid of a new invasion. So we pray that that doesn't happen.
Have they recovered from that 2019 invasion? I know you were there along with Chuck Colton from CBN. What's the situation after that Turkish invasion?
Many people were killed. One of my teammates, who was the uncle to my girls, and my son was killed next to me by Turkish drone strike. We had hundreds of wounded we took care of. There's over 200,000 permanently displaced. They all want to go home. You know, I get calls and messages, even when I'm in Burma. Mr. David, when will I go home? The Turks are in my home. And so they live in fear. Now, we don't know what's going to happen because last month in October, President Erdogan threatened the Kurds here with another invasion. But that has not happened. And so we pray for President Erdogan to have a change of heart. And then God blesses him to find another way. And right now, there are no attacks, and we hope it stays that way. But they're getting ready. They're putting their defenses in. They have hiding places. Everyone's also ready to flee if they need to.
Tell us what you've done, you and Free Burma Rangers and your partners, in terms of helping the body there, the body of Christ there, in terms of their churches and their morale.
Chris, you know, I mostly feel they help us. Like, we come here, they feed us, we sleep on their floors, and wonderful hospitality for people who have very little. And also, last night I was talking with a pastor who used to be a Muslim and very devout Muslim. He said Jesus came to him in dreams and visions. He has like 5 different visions where he went to Jerusalem. Actually, in one vision, he was afraid because he's in the place of Jews. And he said, we're told Jews are our enemy. And in my dream, I was so afraid to be with Jews. But in Jerusalem, Jesus was revealed to me. And he said, I have a purpose for you. And he also saw the amazing thing, you know, I couldn't read and write Arabic before. He said, after that vision, I could read and write. And I began to read the Bible in Arabic. And so then he started a church. Another family here that fled ISIS went to Turkey, became followers of Jesus through the Christians in Turkey, came back and started a church as well. And then there's the old Syriac church and the Armenian church. You know, a lot of the Armenians fled the genocide in the 1900s, right after the First World War. A lot of them came to Syria. They built a church in Raqqa, only to see it destroyed by ISIS in 2016. And finally, when Raqqa was liberated, the Armenian Christians asked us, can you help us rebuild the church? And I was like, we don't have money for that, but we can pray. God can do anything. And we prayed. Funding came in, which I'm so grateful for, from Christians all over America. And we just dedicated the church on November the 10th this year, 2021, in Raqqa. There were Christians there, Armenian Christians, evangelical Christians, Syriac Christians, Muslims, Kurds, everybody. And it was just a wonderful feeling to be there and worship Jesus.
Up next, a major Jerusalem attraction prepares itself to welcome international visitors when they return. While COVID has drastically reduced international tourism, one major attraction in Jerusalem is using the downtime for a major restoration project. The goal is to be open to welcome visitors from around the world back to the city. The Tower of David Museum stands as a citadel, guarding the entrance to Jerusalem's Old City. Some see it as one of the crown jewels of the city.
The only museum in the world that tells the full story of Jerusalem, 4,000 years of rich history. Inside this magnificent citadel of the city represent all the layers from the history of Jerusalem.
This week, the museum held a groundbreaking for a new pavilion and welcome center next to the Jaffa Gate. The Jaffa Gate serves as the main gateway into the old city of Jerusalem. With this new entrance and welcome center, the Tower of David Museum wants to increase the experience for millions of visitors to the most unique city in the world.
visitors will be able to enter the citadel from the west, enjoy the archaeology and history, and exit through the original Ottoman gate of the citadel straight to the streets of the old city with the knowledge and experience from the Tower of David as the perfect introduction to Jerusalem.
The groundbreaking marked the halfway point of a multi-million-dollar restoration and conservation project. CBN News has chronicled this effort to modernize the museum, excavate ancient artifacts, and conserve treasures like this tower built by King Herod during the time of Jesus. Now the focus is the new Welcome Center. The construction presented a daunting engineering challenge. How do you dig down more than 50 feet next to a 500-year-old wall without making it collapse?
The engineering challenges were really unbelievable in its sensitivity and problematic, because we are building a building next to a very important wall of the citadel, which is 10 meters high, and we need to go 7-8 meters deep, and we need to make sure that nothing happens to this wall.
Kimmel shows how they met the challenge.
What you see now is a stage where we can sleep at night, because there is already a concrete wall. There are the metal beams that support and know that we are safe.
Alongside the engineering comes the archaeology, where many finds were examined in the laboratory.
It is once-in-a-generation opportunity to dig the citadel. The last excavations conducted in the late 1980s.
Notes and pictures from a British archaeologist more than 100 years ago helped guide Israeli archaeologists to find artifacts from Jerusalem's 3,000-year-old history, from Ottoman-era smoking pipes to the time of the First Temple. Those involved in the project feel a sense of history.
It's really one of the most exciting projects an architect can hope for, to work inside history and give a new, let's say, a new life to this history and make it accessible for everybody.
The completion of this project is expected by November 2022. Still ahead, an Israeli design mall opens in an area that brings together Israeli and Palestinian merchants. A brand new upscale mall outside Jerusalem is drawing a lot of attention. It's not just because of the high quality goods. As CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl shows us, the shopping destination brings together Jewish and Arab merchants in what the world often calls the occupied territories.
This luxurious European-style shopping center sits in the Judean desert, about 10 miles outside Jerusalem.
Our dream is that when people buy apartment or build apartment or house, they will come for some place in this city and they will find all what they need for the house or for the apartment.
120 stores are already open here and 50 more are planning to do the same. With prices ranging from inexpensive to luxury, they say you can find anything you want for your home right here at D-City.
Furniture, kitchen, tiles, all what people need for the house, they can find here.
Panina Revach is CEO of the Design City or D-City Mall.
Only when people come here, they really understand it's very special, very different. It's not only place to come to buy, it's really place that they can come, they can enjoy.
Situated on the road to the Dead Sea, the mall offers restaurants, a hotel, and even a nearby theme park.
I talk about tourists. And I'm sure that when we have some options like this, that we have very good restaurant and it's on the way for the Dead Sea, all of them will stop here, will come to enjoy in this place.
D-City is built in what much of the world calls a settlement, although Israelis as well as Palestinians from the West Bank can set up shop here.
I started to looking for a shop here, maybe to open something new, maybe to open something to go along with the theme. I decided to open a gadgety luxury gift shop that gives answers to alternative of perfumes and t-shirts and standard regular gifts.
Luai Gul, a Palestinian from Jerusalem, owns a gift shop in Ramallah and now is opening one at D-City.
To be honest, in a daily life, we try not to go deep into politics. Just come here, do business together, live together, we share interests, we share businesses, we share life, basically.
This is the 10th Nicoletti store in Israel.
We opened before 2 months here, and Nicoletti is a design furniture, luxury from Italy, fabric, leather, and we have table with marble, wood, and all Italian style in here in Israel, in this shop.
Tom Ovadia, son of the owner, says while this isn't a typical location for a mall like this, there are advantages.
Mishor Adumim is not the best location in Israel, but this is something different because the Palestinians and Jews together here, and we sell for a lot of Palestinians. They can come to here. They don't need nothing. They can come, buy, and go.
This is the first project in Israel, like the design city. It's the first time I see something like that, okay? And it's really special to come to work here.
Israelul manages this store.
We don't feel any differences, like we are one family here. Arabs, Jews, Muslims, Christians, we are all one. We live here, we live in Israel.
We need to work together and we need to do the step for peace and love. I am Jew, she is Arabic, Muslim, and everything is okay.
So from designing and furnishing your home to tourist attraction to Israeli-Palestinian relations, the new Design City Mall is an experiment and an adventure that they hope will succeed. Julie Stahl, CBN News, D-City Mall, Mishor Adumim.
D-City is a great example of how Israelis and Palestinians work together. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.